The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in the shadow of unprecedented chaos. For the first time in 10 millennia, the great chamber on Centrum Prime buzzed with genuine fear rather than ceremonial authority. Representatives from 700 civilizations had gathered not to issue decrees, but to confront the collapse of everything they had believed about the nature of power. Ambassador Zethkara studied the assembled delegates, her 4 eyes taking in expressions she had never seen in this chamber before. The towering Krillian representatives stood rigid with barely contained fury. The ethereal Vossazani flickered with patterns of deep confusion. Even the ancient Nexarians, whose crystalline forms had witnessed the rise and fall of countless empires, seemed diminished by recent events. High Chancellor Mordak called for order, his voice carrying none of its usual commanding presence. The massive Zentorian's 6 arms gestured weakly at the chaos of voices filling the chamber. Delegates, please. We must address the human situation with rational discourse. Rational? The voice belonged to War Premier Class Tai of the Krillian Empire. His species representative standing nearly 3 meters tall and bristling with barely controlled aggression. These primitives have made a mockery of our authority. They must be crushed before their disease of rebellion spreads further. A chorus of agreement rose from several delegations, but it was quickly countered by voices of concern, and even Zethkara could hardly believe it, voices of admiration. With respect, War Premier, interjected Minister Lises Andra of the Valdris Collective, her melodious voice cutting through the din. Perhaps we should consider why so many species are suddenly questioning council authority. The humans have demonstrated that resistance is possible. Maybe that's a conversation worth having. The chamber erupted. Accusations of treason flew alongside demands for immediate military action. Ancient alliances began showing stress fractures as delegates aligned themselves into 3 distinct factions. Those demanding total war against humanity, those calling for negotiation, and a growing third group that seemed to be questioning the fundamental premise of council authority itself. Science Coordinator Mitharin activated the chamber's holographic display, showing the current state of galactic affairs. The image that appeared sent ripples of unease through the assembled delegates. 17 species had formally declared independence from council authority in the 3 days since the human attack. 12 others had issued demands for renegotiation of their status within the galactic hierarchy. Trade routes that had flowed smoothly for centuries were disrupting, as species began forming independent alliances based on mutual benefit rather than council mandate. The situation is deteriorating rapidly, Mitharin reported, her crystalline voice chiming with scientific objectivity. Our economic models predict complete collapse of the current system within 1 standard year. If these trends continue, then we destroy them all. War Premier Class Tai roared. Every species that has dared to defy council authority must be made an example. Let their burned worlds remind the galaxy of the price of rebellion. Commander Velthos, still bearing the shame of his inability to predict human resistance, stood to address the chamber. War Premier, with respect, the humans have demonstrated capabilities that our intelligence services failed to detect. Their stealth technology, their weapons, their strategic coordination. We may be facing a more formidable opponent than our models suggest. High Chancellor Mordak leaned forward, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber floor. Commander, what is your assessment of human military capabilities? Velthos consulted his datapad, though Zethkara suspected he had memorized the troubling statistics it contained. Initial analysis suggests the humans have achieved technological parity with council forces in several key areas. Their fusion technology surpasses our own by significant margins. Their stealth capabilities render our sensor networks largely ineffective. Most concerning, their strategic doctrine appears designed specifically to exploit the weaknesses of large, centralized military organizations. Minister Lises Andra spoke up from her delegation section. Commander, what weaknesses? The humans don't fight like a conventional military force. Velthos explained reluctantly. They operate in small, independent units, capable of acting without central coordination. When we destroy one group, it doesn't affect the others. When we mass our forces to attack their strongholds, they simply avoid engagement and strike elsewhere. They fight like parasites, snarled War Premier Classes Ty. They fight like predators, Velthos corrected. Every engagement has been calculated to inflict maximum damage, while avoiding decisive battle. They're not trying to conquer territory, they're trying to make governing it impossible. Ambassador Zethkara found herself studying the tactical analyses with growing unease. The humans had struck 17 major installations in the past 3 days, but they hadn't attempted to hold any of them. Instead, they destroyed key infrastructure and vanished, leaving Council forces to guard empty ruins, while human ships struck elsewhere. "What about their numbers?" asked Elder Vorthan of the Ancient Assembly. "Surely they cannot maintain these operations indefinitely." Science Coordinator Myth Aaron's response sent new waves of concern through the chamber. Initial estimates suggested the humans possessed perhaps 100 viable military vessels. Updated intelligence indicates we may have underestimated their capabilities by a factor of 10 or more. The silence that followed was deafening. "Explain," High Chancellor Mordak commanded. "The humans appear to have been conducting a massive shipbuilding program in hidden facilities throughout their solar system and allied territories. Their construction methods are crude, but extremely rapid. While we build individual masterpieces of engineering, they mass-produce functional vessels designed for specific mission profiles." War Premier Klastai's laugh was bitter. "Quantity over quality? We've seen this before. Our superior technology may not matter." Mytherin interrupted, her crystalline form pulsing with agitation. "War Premier, they're not trying to build ships capable of standing against our dreadnoughts in direct combat. They're building ships designed to avoid such combat entirely, while striking at targets we can't adequately protect." The tactical display updated, showing human operational patterns across the galaxy. Their attacks followed no conventional military doctrine, striking communication hubs one day and supply depots the next. Administrative centers the day after that. Each strike was precisely calculated to cause maximum disruption to Council operations while avoiding engagement with major military assets. "They're dismantling our ability to govern," realized Minister Lysandra. "Every attack targets something essential for maintaining control over large territories." Commander Velthos nodded grimly. "Their strategy appears designed to make the cost of maintaining galactic authority exceed the benefits of possession." High Chancellor Mordak struggled to process this information. For 10,000 years, Council strategy had been based on overwhelming technological and numerical superiority. The idea that a primitive species could challenge that superiority through asymmetric warfare was almost incomprehensible. "What do the humans want?" he asked finally. "Independence," replied Ambassador Zethkara, who had been studying human communications throughout the crisis. "They've made their position clear from the beginning. They want the right to exist as a sovereign species, to form their own alliances, to trade freely without Council oversight." "Impossible," War Premier Clastai declared. "If we grant independence to one species, others will demand the same. The entire galactic order will collapse." The irony wasn't lost on anyone present. The galactic order was already collapsing. The human rebellion had exposed fundamental flaws in a system based on enforced compliance rather than voluntary cooperation. Minister Lysandra stood to address the chamber, her voice carrying a note of determination that surprised many delegates. "Perhaps it's time to consider that our galactic order is flawed. The humans haven't attacked civilian populations or conquered worlds for resources. They've demonstrated that resistance to tyranny is possible, and other species are taking notice." "You speak of treason," War Premier Classes Tai accused. "I speak of evolution," Lysandra replied calmly. 10,000 years ago, the Council emerged from the chaos of the galactic wars. We brought peace through strength, order through authority. But perhaps the time has come to find peace through cooperation, rather than domination. The chamber erupted again. But this time, the voices of dissent were fewer and less certain. The undeniable reality was that human resistance had inspired other species to question their place in the galactic hierarchy. The old system was breaking down whether the council accepted it or not. Science Coordinator Mitharin activated a new display, showing economic and social trends across council space. Delegates, I must report that human actions have triggered fundamental changes in galactic civilization. Trade partnerships based on mutual benefit are replacing resource extraction mandates. Military alliances are forming outside council oversight. Independent research consortiums are sharing technology freely rather than surrendering it to council archives. Elder Vorthan's ancient voice carried across the chamber. The humans have introduced chaos into our ordered universe. No, Ambassador Zethkara replied, surprising herself with her certainty. They've introduced choice. The truth of her statement hung in the air like a challenge. For millennia, the Council had made choices for countless species, which resources to extract, which technologies to develop, which alliances to permit. The humans had shattered that system by demonstrating that species could choose their own path, even in the face of overwhelming opposition. High Chancellor Mordak called for a formal vote on military response to human aggression, but the result reflected the chaos engulfing galactic civilization. The vote split almost evenly between continued warfare, negotiated settlement, and complete restructuring of council authority. Chancellor, Commander Velthos reported, we're receiving a transmission from the human leadership. They're requesting permission to address the council directly. The request sent new ripples of debate through the chamber. No non-council species had ever addressed the full assembly. The precedent would be unprecedented. Let them speak, Minister Lisazandra called out. If we're going to decide their fate, we should at least hear their words. War Premier Klaus Tai objected vehemently, but his voice was increasingly isolated. The tide of opinion was shifting as delegates grappled with the reality that the old system was already broken. High Chancellor Mordak made the decision that would mark the end of one era and the beginning of another. Activate the communication array. The chamber's holographic display activated, revealing the image of Admiral Jack Morrison aboard his flagship. The human looked tired but determined, his uniform bearing the marks of recent combat. Behind him, the bridge of his vessel bustled with activity as crew members coordinated operations across human space. Honorable delegates, Morrison began, his voice carrying across the chamber with respectful authority. I address you, not as a conqueror, but as a representative of beings who wish only to live free. His words were simple, but their impact on the assembled delegates was profound. This wasn't the speech of a terrorist or rebel. It was the plea of someone fighting for the most basic rights of sentient existence. We understand that our resistance has caused disruption throughout the galaxy, Morrison continued. We regret the chaos, but we could not accept extinction as the price of your order. War Premier Klaus's Tai rose to his feet. Human, you speak of freedom while destroying the peace we have maintained for 10 millennia. Morrison's response was immediate and devastating in its simplicity. War Premier, what good is peace without freedom? What value is order built on the suffering of others? Pruned. The question struck at the heart of everything the Council had built. For 10,000 years, they had told themselves that the suffering of the few was justified by the peace of the many. The humans were forcing them to confront the moral foundations of their civilization. We offer you a choice, Morrison said, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. Continue this war, and watch your empire tear itself apart as species after species follows our example. Or work with us to build something better, a galaxy where species cooperate by choice rather than compulsion. Minister Lisazandra stepped forward. Admiral Morrison, what guarantees can you offer that independence won't lead to the chaos and warfare that necessitated council authority in the first place? Morrison smiled grimly. None, Minister. Freedom comes with risks. But we believe that beings capable of reaching the stars are capable of choosing their own destiny, even if they sometimes choose poorly. His honesty was startling. Most diplomatic overtures came laden with promises and guarantees. The humans offered only the right to succeed or fail, on their own terms. High Chancellor Mordak found himself asking the question that would define the future of galactic civilization. A new compact, Morrison replied. Species joined by choice rather than conquest. Trade partnerships based on mutual benefit rather than resource extraction. Military cooperation against genuine threats rather than enforcement of arbitrary authority. In short, a galaxy where beings work together because they choose to, not because they're forced to. As the session continued into the night, it became clear that the galaxy had reached a turning point. The human rebellion had shattered the illusion of inevitable authority, forcing every species to choose between the comfort of subjugation and the uncertainty of freedom. The age of empire was ending. The age of choice had begun. And in the end, as species after species declared their independence and formed new alliances based on mutual respect rather than enforced hierarchy, even the staunchest defenders of the old order began to understand what the humans had known from the beginning. No authority is absolute when those it rules refuse to submit. Freedom, once tasted, cannot be forgotten, and sometimes the courage of a single species to say no is enough to change the destiny of an entire galaxy.